why will Sarvam win at whatever it does is because of this.
I feel 2026 is India's year of entering AI in a big way.
What we've also understood when talking to larger enterprises anywhere in the world, on that inference layer, two things matter: flexibility and cost.
The custom model that we build will be 5 times cheaper. This is an exact example, and it does the job better than the models that they were using.
These consumer AI apps in the world make any money even
Yes.
on unit economics.
Yes.
Like just pure, like every single time one of us hits these consumer AI apps with a query, they lose money.
We need a lot more risk capital to say, hey, India is not small ARPU, it's not small TAM, it's
Correct.
huge, AI is big.
But tell us a little bit about the recent round, how that came about, what's the raise, and what's next.
No, absolutely. We just did a Series B, about $340 billion, right? I think it's $1 billion opportunity in India.
Hi everyone, this is Aakrit Vaish from Activate. I'm back here for a new episode of Signal Dialogues, and today is again one of those special episodes. Every one of these, I feel, over the last few weeks has been like that, but today is one that I think we both have been meaning to do for a long time. I'm excited to be joined by Pratyush Kumar Panda, co-founder and CEO of Sarvam, and a friend and somebody who I have been scheming on and working with on what sovereign AI in India looks like. I think from the start that we met, feels like our mission and what we want to accomplish have been very aligned. And today I'm excited to obviously have you here. Recently, we of course made all our relationship and partnership official when Activate announced our strategic investment in Sarvam. So thank you for that partnership, and officially look forward to now supporting you and the company. And welcome, Pratyush.
No, thanks a lot, Akrit. Great to be here, part of the podcast. But as you said, the relationship goes much longer, and now we are working together with the partnership with Activate. Really glad that this has deepened so much, and looking forward to doing great things together.
Yeah. So, as we were prepping for this over the last few hours or few minutes, rather, as we always do, everything is let's discuss right before we start. Today I think both of us want to focus on this idea of what's the business of Sarvam. I think um, the most common question I get, and I'm sure you also get it, but people are a little bit more explicit with me, is look, what does Sarvam the business look like? I think everybody understands the mission: sovereign AI, models, compute, full stack AI for India. But today, the I think what would help everybody, and what I think you've not spoken about too much before, is how does Sarvam become a valuable company over the next 30, 40, 50 years. Um, and the first step towards having the conversation is capital. Um, and recently there have been, obviously, you announced some pieces and there have been some news. But tell us a little bit about the recent round, how that came about, what's the raise, and what's next.
No, absolutely. We just did a Series B, about $340 billion, right? So this puts us now on track to get a bunch of things done on our key mission. So let me just recount the mission, and then we'll go into the business as you put it. We have 3 phrases to what Sarvam stands for. One is to build on the frontier, right? We are an R&D driven organization whose job it is to take latest ideas, both built inside or being done in other places, and actually push the frontier of AI. So why do we use the word frontier? Unlike other technologies which all continue to improve, the the business of AI is about improving very, very fast. Whether it is the model, whether it's the application, whether it's the hardness, things keep moving very fast. So the first commitment that we have is to build for the frontier. The second one is to create value. I'll talk a lot more about this. There are businesses that are using Sarvam at scale, and unlike the promise of AI, which is that I think it's a good thing, we need to be able to translate it to business outcomes. So that's the second part. And values for organizations in terms of business outcomes, for people in terms of their individual requirements. And the third is to do it in the scale of decades and not quarters.
Amazing.
AI is something that's sort of like moving very fast. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening every week, but we have a longer term horizon of being a platform company out of India that can actually be an organization that a bank, a startup, a government entity can bank on and say, if I want to do AI, I'll do it with Sarvam, right? So that's the third part, right? So this fundraise goes a long way to enable that to happen because, as you know, capital is required for the compute that is required to train and run models. Also required for talent. We are opening up an office in the Bay Area to also infuse more talent to build cutting edge models. So that's a little bit about the fundraise, right? About the company itself. See, the bottom line is. And so it's been a journey, right? We started off as an entity that said, let's build models, and we did a
Hmm.
bunch of things, right?
It was a research forward lab.
It was a research forward lab, and it's also good to recount what we did because sometimes it's not said in a single stretch. We started off by contributing to the Meta's Llama models. In fact, we're the only company out of
Yes.
Asia to be acknowledged as part of Llama 3, which was, by the way, a great model.
Yeah, of course.
And I was in the AI advisory board of Meta for a year. So we started off there. When the first GPUs came to India, the Hopper class, I remember very clearly it came in Yota, and we took 1,000 of those,
As
wired
part of
it
the
up.
AI mission.
In fact, before that,
Before
even
that,
before
that's true.
that, it was
Yeah.
there, and we were in fact few months before that, and we said, hey, we can actually wire them up and pre-train a model. Pre-training is the first step of model training. It's usually the compute-intensive part, and we built a 2 billion parameter model. In fact, Salil from
Correct.
Infosys mentioned it in the quarterly call because we built a custom model
For
from them
Pinnacle.
for Finacle, right? And then the third thing we did was we learned reinforcement learning at scale, which is the key algorithm that leads to performance improvement.
Of course.
We took Mistral's model. Before Mistral built a thinking model, which is what these models do. They think before they answer. We built a thinking model on top of Mistral and we released it as Sarvam M. So all of this work was in the open source. And while people might have had different views of what we were doing, essentially what we were doing was climb the ladder of capability in terms of models, right?
Interesting.
And then we went ahead and, as part of the India mission, which you played an important role also to get going, we built from scratch models for 30 billion, 105 billion parameters. And just to put that in context, from scratch is when you're not relying on anybody's model, you're doing it from scratch, data is yours, algorithms are yours, you run your own GPUs. So, a bunch of capability the team built to put together models, right? This is track one, the R&D thread of Sarvam, right?
Building capability.
Building deep tech capability. And I just want to recount here that we are in the second over of a test match in
Hmm.
terms of the R&D, right? By no means this is a done deal. By no means today's models will be used in 2 years' time. By no means is a winner-take-all market, right? And it's important to have to build at the frontier, right? Because why? Because one, the accumulated judgment that we have of what works in the models is the moat, frankly. and
100%.
and the second thing is the vantage point of the model builder gives a
I think
lot.
I just want to repeat that line again because I know you said that so many times before. Is that, and I think people don't often interpret it correctly, right? Like, why will Sarvam win at whatever it does?
Mm,
Is because of this accumulated judgment on what the foundation does,
mm, mm,
right? Because the depth of understanding that, let's say, the team and you and others are building and still have a long way to go,
mm,
that empowers you
mm.
with the knowledge and judgment to then build products on top that can power organizations or consumers.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that is very critical because, and I see this, right? Because we are doing the core work of building the models, we can interpret things happening around the models much better. For example, the harness for coding, right? There's a huge flux now on how should you build coding harnesses. We understand that much better because we
Correct.
understand how models work.
And so you can implement it much better.
Implement it much better. We can co-evolve these two components and so on, right? Likewise for infrastructure, to be able to build value for enterprises, you need to be able to run models at scale, and we'll talk about that and the efficiency levers there because you understand GPUs well, because you are trying to eke out
Yeah.
every ounce of performance during
Yeah.
training. You can bring those skills to inferencing, which people need to do at scale, right? And finally, when people talk about forward deployed, Forward deployed, it looks like it is really about taking a business problem, solving it. But often it might also include, hey, these are new capabilities we need. Let's get our stack to have it, right? And I'll again talk about it later. We are now getting into a world where we are building custom models for organizations. We say, hey, forward deployed, here is
Yeah.
the data that this organization has. Let's build a model for them. The custom model that we build will be 5 times cheaper. This is a exact example, and it does the job better than the models that they were using, right? So to sum this point, right, there's a research set of Sarvam. By the way, it also includes models for speech recognition. We just announced at our Epoch
Yep.
event a few weeks back.
Everybody saw that incredible demo.
Right, right. The
Yeah.
demo. So there is multi-speaker speech recognition. There is in English. We showed that we are beating global models on English, on American English even. Like out of 7 benchmarks, 6 of them were international benchmarks, right? And for the first time, we have a model which is of global standards built out of India on an important task like speech recognition. On speech synthesis, we were behind with models not being as expressive. And now we were able to put together a system which is not just expressive from the point of view of voice calling, but actually for media applications. It's cinematic level audio, right? And on vision with document processing, we showed that we have a Pareto optimal model, does much better than many models,
Yeah.
including Mistral's OCR, Google's OCR, and so on, right? So while there's a tech side, there's also there's all these pieces, right? All of this together is our R&D thread, and it's important because we talk about India's investment in R&D and so on being low, and in this particular area that's essential, right? But the goal is, and we can talk more about this, how do we bring all of this
Yeah.
to the market, to businesses in India and elsewhere, where we would like to create business process optimizations that really bring them value, and we have been doing a bunch of them and happy to
Yeah.
dive into it.
So perfect. Great segue, right? So let's go much deeper into all of this. So is Sarvam, in the classic sense of viewing as a company, is it a B2B enterprise um, services, sales, software company?
So I see us as a B2B platform company, which enterprises will depend with high trust for their AI needs, right? And AI needs will include.
So before moving forward, I know you had done a few experiments on the consumer side. While they, of course, remain as good experiments for data, model improvement, and so on, is that a business Sarvam plans to get into?
Not as a business strategy right now,
Hmm.
right? We are focused on B2B.
Perfect.
We believe that there is a huge population scale impact you can have through the important institutions in India. So that's where we are focused on.
Got it. Correct. So perfect. So enterprise platform.
Yes, so as an enterprise platform, you should be able to partner with us, to trust us deeply, to be bringing your AI workloads here, right? And what does it include? It includes starts from infrastructure.
Hmm.
You need to get access to GPUs to run your stuff, and this is very important because, for example, we work a lot in the BFSI sector. There's regulated sectors. There is a growing concern, even globally. Apparently, CEO was on CNBC, was
Yeah.
very vocal of owning
Everybody
your
saw that speech.
every saw that speech, right? So I think owning your own AI is going to be an important theme, and that depends on access to compute. If you don't have access to compute, then you can't do that. And compute needs to have two characteristics: it should be available and secure, and it should be cost effective. So what we have been building is
And local.
yes. So the perimeter of control is yours, right? Sometimes it could be national boundaries, sometimes it could be my own VPC of my own company, but the perimeter is under your control, right?
And you mentioned this in the past before that that's your definition of even sovereign.
Exactly. I think people are interpreting sovereignty as a matter of nationalistic pride. There's an angle to that, but sovereignty is really about owning the stack, ensuring that the value loops are yours rather than go out, right? Because take a software company. The whole IP is the software.
Yeah.
If your software traces or a bank, the bank, in fact, is really about user data. And if user data were to go out to common systems, I think you should be very worried because a bank of the future is going to just look like an AI company that does very personalized relationships with every individual. Right?
So if I'm a bank, and today we are in Mumbai, and I know what brings you here is obviously a lot of such conversation. The financial services companies, what's the Sarvam offering for me?
Yeah, so it starts with that infrastructure. We say that, hey, we have infrastructure. We are going to invest in getting high quality compute in India. And because of the fundraise and other sources of funding, we are going to be able to procure compute at scale. We are going to be able to run on it our own stack for inferencing. So inferencing is when you are running these models,
Yeah.
and you need to do that very efficiently. There are big models, small models. There is a bunch of things like KV caching. There's a bunch of kernel optimizations. There is disaggregated serving. All of that goodness you bring, and every model is different, right? So you might want
So
to
this
use.
infra plus inferencing, what you launched recently at Epoch also, is that like a PaaS model?
That is the past model. It is in fact we on all numbers we are globally competitive. Whether it's players like Fireworks or Together AI, at equivalent price, sometimes better prices, we would be able to serve a range of models. This will include Sarvam's models. It'll include open models that people really care and want to use, and it'll include custom models we built for you, right? And so that becomes the linchpin of all of this, right? Let's and in fact we look at it as, if you want to own AI, you have to be able to manufacture intelligence, and that's the layer where you can do that. That's the first offering, right? And in fact, it's not just banks. I think there will be savvy,
Yeah, of course.
digital native
Yeah,
companies. They all want to be able to do their own.
I mean, that ultimately is, I think, to your point, precisely, right? I think what we've also understood when talking to larger enterprises anywhere in the world on that inference layer, two things matter: flexibility and cost,
Yes.
right? Like if you can give it to me at a certain price and I can then, like you said, host a range of models, custom model, my model, outside model, you can sort of give enough like tooling in the mix for me to be able to customize. That's what I'm looking for.
There is one more deeper nuance also, which might be interesting to your audience. Um, the world of models is changing rapidly, right? There are new models coming out. There are variations available. People sometimes don't even have enough time to go figure out which models to use, but they do know they want to do co-work agents. They know that they want to do coding. They want to do voice AI. We will also provide routed endpoints, which will route between models, the best of the class models today, where the complexity of an input will match against the model that we hit it. In fact, we demonstrated this. We built a custom router between our own reasoning model and a much larger frontier model.
So if I'm an enterprise, basically you're saying that, look, this is a platform and the platform has enough solutioning, flexibility, customization built in where you can sort of, if there's a radar, if there's like this sort of, I can move the dial a little bit. I can move the dial to say, listen, I want extreme flexibility where my team can come in, build on top, customize. Or if I'm like, hey, listen, I don't want to like deal with so much of this, I can go full automation and say, look, you figure this out for me.
Absolutely. So, and depending on and it's all about benchmarks, right? So you can say, hey, let's look at coding and let's look at the top 5 benchmarks, and say that, hey, is a routed model where you're routing between 2-3 models depending on the complexity of the task. For example, when you're coding, there are times when you just need to summarize pieces of code.
Yeah, for that you don't need
You don't need much larger models, right? You can do smaller models to save tokens. Sometimes you are doing plan mode, which is really hard work. You want the best models to put that together, right? So I think that's going to be an important thing. So the abstraction of, there is infra, then there are models, and then there are routed endpoints, right?
It's like 3 layers of
There's 3 layers, right? And there'll be companies that can access the models directly. Like you said, the flexibility, there's some companies that say, let's take the routed more and we'll save cost and so on, right? So this is offering number 1. That is infrastructure models.
Clear.
And as I said, you can also do custom models. We in fact released a program called Sarvam Train, which allows you to train your own custom model without all the complexity of GPUs and reinforcement learning and so on, right? 30 lines of code in Python. Here is my data. Take this model, fine tune it, right? I think that's also a very interesting thing. I personally was thinking this will take some more time to come to India, but already we are finding that banks, especially given the volume of data they have, they can see value in doing this. So you can actually say, on this particular task, I have so much data with high security. I'm going to train a custom model on that, and that model belongs to me, and I'll run that model in the infra. I see this as a great way of reducing cost for companies, right? So that's the infra layer, right? Once you go above the infra layer, there is of course models that we have, right? And we have, for example, on the voice side, now built the entire stack of speech recognition, a reasoning model.
And to be clear, as you're going through these different layers of the stack, each can be used on its own.
Absolutely.
So I can use your speech recognition model and I may already be having an inference provider for whatever reason. Yes. I may already be working with somebody else. I can deploy it and use it over there.
Yeah.
SIP inverse is also true. I can use the underlying stack and for whatever reason I must be using some other speech provider for now. I can host that speech provider on your inference.
Yes, and an interesting thing is that companies are already doing this, right? Companies are already. I mean, we have 1 million developers registered on the Sarvam platform, and one way or the other, they're doing different things. There are many people using APIs without thinking about inference at all.
So just pausing over here, then Pratyush, economics wise, right? Like obviously you want everybody to use everything because that's the highest margin business, right? Ultimately, I know the last layer is going to be application. You want somebody, you want your FTEs to go in, solve the customer problem where the full stack is Sarvams. But like as sort of that call it that common startup kind of playbook, where's the wedge typically for you in when you're going to enterprise? And ideally, if you had to pick one of these things, where is the highest economics and ROI?
See, I think the enterprise adoption of AI has rapidly expanded. By the way, I feel 2026 is India's year of entering AI in a big way. We had the Impact Summit earlier in the year. I am seeing clarity in the market in adoption, right? While the world is maybe a little bit going through some kind of soul searching. And I feel from now on for the next 10 years, India is going to zoom in AI, right? And every organization, every enterprise, every citizen is going to use
100% aligned. Yeah.
AI on that, right? And I think where that is coming from is that there's value across the board, right? Right at inferencing, there's a lot of value compared to buying packaged products, right? And you will find many companies say, I have a coding harness, I'll use a coding model and go, right? So for us, that layer, which is inferencing and infrastructure layer, already brings a lot of value to customers, which we will then share with them, right? The models itself is, as I said, an R&D investment. What we are finding is because we're able to push towards the frontier, you have to be at the frontier to be relevant, right? And now we're able to push towards that. We are going to see a huge adoption of models themselves, right? But then there is the application layer where we have our own end-to-end products. I feel in terms of market uptake, right? This will continue to be an important one where both our the margins for us are higher, but also we are much closer to the outcomes.
Margin is directly proportional to ROI for the company.
For the company,
right? So application is always where it is.
Correct. And frankly, the industry is still maturing where they need to figure out the outcomes along with us, right? So you work with the companies and actually end to end solve it, right? And this some good examples are in the case of IDFC. We have proved that we are significantly better than human effort in terms of voice calling while being much cheaper and running at massive scales. Right? We're talking about 50 lakh interactions per month as well, right? In the case of Tata Capital, they were able to prove that they could reduce their customer acquisition cost by half and do it at, again, a massive scale, right? In the case of SBI Life is an interesting one. We have a sales enablement platform, which sort of like a sales guy before he steps into
internally for their sales.
Yeah, before they start
insurance sales guys. Yeah.
Insurance sales guys, right? McKinsey did a study. The guys who are using our platform are 60% more effective in doing that. We were working with NABARD, which is a bank for the rural bank and so on. They were talking about 47x more ROI on voice AI with us because, well, their baselines are much more, let's say 5 years behind the curve, and when they leapfrog to AI, they're seeing huge value, right? And another example is on the more on the agentic side. With we are working with another insurance company at scale. They receive about 27 million forms every year, which none of the OCR models can process, right? And we build custom models for them.
So many different use cases for that across industries. Correct. Like at financial services itself, the amount of paperwork. Now that I run a fund, I've seen
you can see that. So just like voice, I think voice is inflecting right now, and I think doc AI will also inflect. But what I'm more excited about, so these are things that we are on the path.
No, on that, I really want to have this one conversation because this is like scars from a little bit of haptic days, and then of course now investing in AI. Elephant in the room when the conversation around Sarvam as an enterprise company comes up very often, and we should address it today, is okay, great. So we have all of this, but fundamentally, Sarvam is an enterprise platform.
Yes.
And Sarvam, right to win, is an enterprise platform in India, for India. Then your typical sort of next question that I faced through my 10-year journey, and now I ask often is, so what's the India size? Right? If you traditionally enterprise platform, enterprise, companies, AI, even enterprise AI, the standard thing is, hey, listen, I'm not sure of the India market opportunity, go global. My heart hates that, candidly, and that's why we are here today. That's why I built Haptic, right? Because I just think that's such a shorter term view. But as you are going about building what I would like to think is one of India's most important companies and indexing yourself on value creation towards the Indian enterprise customer, what are you seeing in terms of like addressing this TAM question of contract values, sizes, market opportunity? Like, can we see the potentially things can go wrong, but can we see the same type of uptake in revenues over the next few years as we have been seeing in AI companies elsewhere?
I think I think India will be an extremely large TAM in AI, right? I've been a little bit looking at what happened in fintech, right? 2016, India was nowhere in the top, I don't know, 10, 20 countries in terms of digital payments. Today, we have 60% of the
Correct.
market share, right? I think already voice AI, if I look at all the numbers that we have, is looking like a first large enterprise AI opportunity that's going to be $1 billion.
Is India, by in your estimate, because I've been doing this math a lot lately myself, in terms of number of voice AI calls, are we the largest by now or getting there?
It's very hard to say because the numbers are not out in the public. Just to give you a sense, we have done about 350 million minutes of calls in the last 12 months, right? And we are sort of like scaling that up
It's
rapidly.
30 million a month.
And that's
So 50 million probably.
yeah,
run
this
rate
is
now.
over 12 months.
Yeah.
The latest month is much higher, right?
Yeah.
I think it's $1 billion opportunity in India on voice, right?
Just voice.
Just voice, right? And this is the first thing. And it's going to happen like in the next 12, 18 months. It's not some faraway destination. I think coding in India, because of the adoption of Anthropic has been very successful in putting out the product. It's been adopted at scale. You're going to see an episode 2 of that play out, where people will say that, hey, I need to do this, but I need to control my costs. And why don't I use my harness, my code base?
By the way, everybody's already saying it.
Already doing
everywhere,
it, right?
It's become too expensive. Token maxing is getting over.
I mean, they will. I think the frontier labs will also react with lower prices, like with Luna and so on. But I think the bottom line is people also realize both cost and the data security matter. So we will have a real opportunity thinking about infrastructure plus alpha on the harness layer. We're just finishing a blog that we'll put out on things you can do at the harness layer to improve coding performance, especially on maintainability, taste, cybersecurity readiness, and so on. There's a lot of stuff you do, right?
It's interesting, both voice and coding, and that's my kind of case for it too, right? Whenever I think about it, both of them, why the market opportunity feels so large, and why I think, to your point, it's closer to taking a parallel of fintech than software, is because they are fundamentally growth opportunities in business, right? So essentially, by using voice AI, you could grow as an enterprise your top line. You could grow your profitability. With coding, you could fundamentally significantly increase your productivity, right? And in India, and they are both also transaction linked, right? Like voice, you give me more leads, you process more payments for me, my wallet is open.
Yes.
Coding, same thing, right? And my engineer becomes more productive. I'm shipping a lot more things. As an Indian customer, I'm willing to sort of, open. I'm willing to sort of, my budgets are unconstrained at that point. I think in India, and that's why it's similar to fintech, where it's a percentage of transaction. I think in India, whenever software has tried to be like a simply an efficiency game, and it's tried to be a little bit more on less transaction driven, but a little bit more seat driven, it's been challenging. But I think that is why the case for AI is so much larger, because it's really playing at the core transaction of the business and helping the business grow materially in either revenue profitability.
No, absolutely. I fully agree. I think the amount of AI that'll get all functions of a company, of an enterprise, I think is going to skyrocket. So voice is one of them, because we are a very large country. You need to reach out to your customers and need to have a heavy touch point. Voice is going to come on apps. Voice is going to come on devices like wearables. Voice is going to come, of course, on telephony, right? So I think voice is going to be huge. Coding is going to be huge. And related to coding is also cybersecurity. I think everybody who is doing any business of any value today realizes that there's an asymmetric asymmetric advantage that the red team has right now in terms of using these big models to attack systems. So being able to test your own systems, being able to sort of like ensure your software is up to the mark is going to be huge, right? And we have played both the attacker and defender in the last few months because of various things have happened, and we've just learned so much there, and we find that it's a big opportunity. So I'll put that as part of coding itself because really part of that. The third thing I genuinely think is the whole it's very abused word right now, agents, but this future of work where individuals who are not necessarily software engineers, knowledge workers who are working with and it could be even a guy on the street, agents are following them and doing all their interesting things. That's going to play a major role. So we have built out a whole stack of managed agents, which is and in fact we released benchmarks comparing that with Harness Bench, which compares all the harnesses in the world. And we saw that we have built a solid system which you can deploy again where you want it. If you're using today Claude Cowork or a Gemini Enterprise, you're actually buying into a model plus a harness, neither of which you know what it is inside the box, right? Here we have built a system where you can take the agentic system, mix it with models again from our infrastructure, and deploy it where you need, right? So whether it's your marketing team, whether it is your finance team, whether it is HR, whether it is even software development of a different kind where you're doing telemetry, dashboarding, testing, all of that in a single place, right? And I was just meeting a bank ED, and they were telling me about how they find it interesting to upload data and then get dashboards out. People will do this all the time. People will, and you need a secure system to do it, which is on your way. That is the third big category.
I totally agree, man. Like, I feel like in India, right, all of these will just expand TAM so rapidly. Like, we won't even know what hit us.
Right.
Like, exactly, right? Voice becomes the starting point because anyways, voice is happening. But all of these knowledge work, coding and everything is just going to surprise us, I think, in terms of how large these things become. So then how do we, Pratyush, think about competition for Sarvam? So we've understood the business, right? So there's infra layer. So you can take infra. Then there's a model layer. Then there's routing, of course, built into model. Then there are these applications and, of course, different use cases. We'll come to FTE in a second, but we've understood broadly what Sarvam takes to, let's say, a large enterprise. But of course, there's competition, right? There is, and mostly, I mean, global competition, right? There is the labs, there are these individual players. There's your 59th agentic AI startup from the US who's claiming to solve a problem and bring a bunch of things from there. What is, how do you think about, like, on a day-to-day, almost like in the weeds when you are talking to customers, solving for that?
So firstly, just want to also add to the previous question. While what we are building is right now focused a lot in India, the stack is generally useful, right?
course.
And while for the next 12 months we don't plan to have a GTM motion externally, we have partnerships with IT services companies now who are very motivated. Yes, HCL, of course, is a big investor, very motivated to take the stack elsewhere.
That's a great point,
right? And these are core infra components which you can take to inferencing, for example, or managed agents. So I think that's something that we will explore. But I think the focus to your question about India, I think firstly, there was this sense I felt maybe over the last 12 months that this is a done deal, that certain companies have already won, right? And I think the revenue uptake of certain companies has been amazing, right? But I see the entire pie expanding so much more in India. So our hockey stick has yet to begin. There has been adoption. There is changes now to various other models and so on. I think as I said, 2026 is year zero for us, right? The global leader is 22 with ChatGPT.
Singularity,
right?
day one.
Singularity is another funny topic. Absolutely. So I think, in fact, if somebody should write something about India, right? So
India singularity.
Yes. Yeah. What does India's journey look like, and what will each year look like, right? This is the start of that, right? And I think that the opportunity is super large. I think competition is important for us to remain at the frontier, right? none of what we build, just because it is Indian built, it should not. People don't want to use it.
It has to be the best.
I think 97, 98% of our revenue is private sector, and they only buy, Indian buyers are the most consummate buyers. They only buy something that makes sense.
We were just talking about it, in fact, over the weekend, right? When I shared some notes with you on Twitter about somebody sharing that, right? Which is that I think one of the things that as Sarvam and all of us, I think it's also as year zero, the shift now has to be great. India, sovereign, of course, that's the mission, that's the story, but we are the best.
Yeah.
Right? It has to be that.
It has to be that, and I think I mean, our DNA is to be doing that. I think the sovereign angle is an interesting angle in itself, but more than the country angle alone, I think it's about companies. Every company is talking about my AI stack. How do I differentiate myself? There are, just like there's competition in AI, there's competition in every field. People can come and put together a SaaS application for what you're building, and people need to be thinking of competitive advantages, right? I think that's going to play out a lot. I think we went through a phase of token maxing, right? We said, let's just use tokens and get
always
something
allowed.
out. But I think now people are going at sort of like level setting a bit more and saying where is value, and that value is about deciding what your whole stack is and building, right? So to your point about competition, I think it's important for us to remain at the frontier. We need to compete fiercely on model benchmarks, global benchmarks, and we are doing that. We are pushing the bar and we're putting things out. I think we should be communicating much more aggressively on what we are doing there, right? And that's the core DNA of the company. We are a research-led organization, right? Then there's competition in the market, which is going out there and saying our story and selling. And frankly, as a company, we are transitioning to becoming better at that.
Year zero.
This is year zero. The teams are being put up now. And I think we are going to get a sales motion that's much more to the point, right? I think Indian enterprises, as you have seen with the haptic days, right? There's a certain motion to it. There's a science to it, and I think we are learning that science much better now, right? And the third thing I also feel is there is going to be why did India win in payments? Because of MDR of zero, right? And the ability to make things work at scale, which I think can also come from the public sector. That's an add-on. It's not the central feature, but India's public sector's adoption of AI at scale, right, is also going to be a strong lift in the whole ecosystem. Right?
And by the way, just want to double dip and highlight one point, which again most people don't know, is that, like you said, as of today, 98% of your revenue is private sector.
Yes.
Right. So it's not as if government has blessed by saying, listen, here's a contract that's coming, right? But most of and to your, no private sector is going to do you a favor.
Yeah.
Right. They're going to buy if you're the best and the most cost efficient.
Exactly. And I think if you can sell in India, you can sell anywhere. And I think that's the core to it. So I think competition is welcome. It's a very, very early phase of this thing. Our timescales are longer. And I think we also feel that the forces that are shaping the business right now, there's a lot of reset happening in the thinking of people. Right?
On the competition point, I'm going to put you on the spot and feel free to take a stab at this. There's been some recent conversation. I'm not talking about my personal point of view, but there's been some bit of recent conversation, amongst entrepreneurs, industry, and maybe some policy that, hey, listen, if we have to build our own AI stack, is there a way that we provide some sort of a incentive or a favor, right, to local AI companies? Of course, India AI mission was different. It was to seed the ecosystem, compute and other thing. That's different. But is there this happened, there was about 5 or 7 years back, there was this entire period where a lot of the local internet entrepreneurs were vigorously fighting for some degree of protectionism from the global, big tech companies because it's hard to otherwise build your own or compete at scale, right? Because ultimately, the largest consumer apps of India have ended up becoming the global companies. What's your view on some of these things?
It's an interesting point, right? See, I think there are two parts to this. One is we need to bring in a lot more capital. So what you're doing at Activate, right, for example, we need a lot more of that. We need in India a lot more risk capital. Why is the US capitalistic system working? Because, of course, the government supports. Government wrote even 3 years back $200 million checks to each AI company as just single contracts. So they do a lot more than Indian government does right now. But it wins primarily because of risk capital being available, right? We need a lot more risk capital to say, hey, India is not small ARPU, it's not small TAM, it's huge, AI is big, let's invest, right? And that's, I think, required. I think there are people who say
90% of what I do every single
yes,
day.
exactly, right? And I think the entrepreneurs will come, right? And things will happen. So I think that's one point to it, right? On the second point, I think on the government side, I mean, it's a matter of where our objectives lie. Look at China, for example. I don't know the mechanics of how they implemented it, but a few years back they said we're going to have 6 companies, 6 tigers. We're going to support them, and we're going to make them big.
Whatever
right?
it takes.
Whatever
Whatever they
it
want.
takes. I mean, maybe they say you ban other things, you do certain things, and so on. So I think China can do it in a particular way. I think India has to be taking a middle path here, right? And I think the things that they did with the India AI mission, I think makes a lot of sense. It's very progressive. Stuff happening in the ISM 1.0, 2.0 is very progressive, right? But one of the important things to recognize is that more than support to build, right, which is useful, I think it is important to think about support to deploy at scale. Right? India's success in DPG or digital public goods or payments has been that it has reached people, right? So we need to distribute value back to people. And government has asymmetric advantage in distribution.
Correct.
Right? Somebody trying to build a consumer AI company and hitting CAC walls is going to struggle.
CAC versus inference cost.
Doesn't matter.
It's
I
not
mean,
gonna
it's a very difficult thing, right? And the
I
government
mean, you and I both know none of these consumer AI apps in the world make any money, even on
Yes.
unit economics.
Yes.
Like just pure, like every single time one of us hits these consumer AI apps with a query, they lose money.
Yeah.
Right.
And on the flip side, people can actually derive value from this. I mean, if every person had access to almost like a consultant for them who understood their point of view and solved it, there's value. So there's value to be created per individual. There is distribution advantage government has. There's innovation that can be built for that. If we can string these three together, there is value that India can put together, right? And I think if we can align policy towards this, more than saying I'll support Indian companies, that could be a corollary. I think the goal should be that Indians should win in AI, and the government has an asymmetric advantage as a structure to enable that, right? But I think bottom line is I think we should get more capital. We should do more R&D. We should attract back folks. I was in the Bay Area. You keep traveling there. I pick an average 40-year-old there, right? I don't see them spending 3-4 decades in the US. If we create the playgrounds of innovation here, they'll come back and they'll build and so on.
And you obviously have started that a little bit with Devendra joining recently. You know, I want to spend the last few minutes, Pratyush, talking about something that I think you've never spoken about, but I think it's important because a large part of our audience and also people who are... See, I keep saying, I think that Activate's mission is to build AI in India, AI for India. And the starting point of that is role models.
Yeah.
The starting point of that is young builders and founders need to have role models to look at, that this can also happen here. And in your own small shape or form, Sarvam is starting to become one, right? And getting there. And we need many more.
Small form, yeah.
Yeah.
Very small form.
No, I'm saying, but I know, you have a long way to go. But look, all said and done, you know, credit where it's due that Sarvam has at least put the story on the map. There's other companies also, right? Nesa, Yota, and some other global India to US companies, Emergent and others. But I want to talk about the founder journey a little bit, right? Because I think that's important. And most importantly, I don't think even we've spoken about this. What's the transition from researcher to CEO?
Yeah, it's a very different world. But what I find interesting is if you can take first principles thinking to many problems, it really helps, right? But bottom line, that's maybe a cute answer. The bottom line is it's a lot of hard work making a company.
You were a professor till 3 years back.
Till about 3.5 years, yeah. 3 years back.
It's amazing to think it was only 3 years back.
Yeah,
like, do you remember that life?
Of course. It was an interesting one. No, but I think the building a company is so much 360 in its view that you really have to pull all your skills to get that right? And I think especially in an area like AI where it's so hectic. You just have to keep building also technically so hard. You need to raise capital of that significant, and at the same time actually sell in the market. I think these are very different skills, right? So it's been interesting. It's been a lot of learning curve. The good thing is that I was fairly naive about what it takes to build a company. Hence, we chose to build a company. Sometimes, if you knew everything, you wouldn't do it, right? But no. But I think it's been very rewarding, and I genuinely feel, and that's why I would love to think about programs with you. I would genuinely think that we are now at a phase where we can both accelerate in terms of revenue and growth, but also in the kind of impact we can have, right? So we are.
What did you consciously do along this way? Like, as you, again, like I said, transitioned, and when we first met a few years back, I can, maybe as a friend, I can tell you, I've just seen a remarkable inflection in your personal growth as CEO, right? Because, again, back when we first met, like any other new founder, you were obviously, like you said, naive, very much research focused, and you still are to a great degree. By the way, fun anecdote I want to tell everybody right now. When we were starting, I said, hey, Pratyush, let's talk about the fundraise a little bit. And he asked his colleague who was here, hey, listen, can you call up the office and find out what did we finally raise? Because it clearly shows where your priorities are, right? You're still so focused on model building that you don't even remember the exact amount you put together. But just what did you actually do, right, to get better at the role of CEO? And was this conscious, subconscious? Because in AI, the other problem as founders have is everything is just like so reactive and moving so fast. You don't really have time to develop your own skills.
Absolutely. No, firstly, I think, and I didn't do enough of it in the early days. I think having a great team around you is the biggest blessing you can have, right? I think because this is something that requires a lot of different energies and skills, and whether it is communicating, whether it is managing the teams, giving direction, having a high touch point with fairly good folks, right? They can all build, they can all do things. You need to be in touch with them, and of course, then work with policy, etc. Right? I think it's main thing is increasing your capacity to be to show up with a team around you. That's one thing, right? The other thing is, I think I sort of had to figure out what are the right places to prioritize, and it's been hard. It's still hard today, right? And how do you understand how much of this is going to mean something in the longer term, because time is what it is, and you I think that's been a big challenge, right? The good thing is, we've not tried to be pretentious in what we do, right? So
Totally agree.
it's very easy, and I see that a little bit, that challenge. Somebody wrote something on Twitter, and then you have to react to it. At least my style has been to be clear in what we are doing and stay focused on that, because that saves energy sometimes, right? And there's so much of noise. For example, we trained something on Mistral, and it was the great decision to make. We did reinforcement learning. We understood it. We put the model, open sourced it. And then there was this noise that why are you building on Mistral? Because it was actually showing that we could improve an existing model significantly, right? In fact, compared it with much more frontier models and showed we could do that. Till today, people think we're building on Mistral, right? And there are and they don't even sometimes accept we built something from scratch.
Yeah, I've
Right?
pinged you so many times. Hey, listen, you should respond to it, react to it, and you're like, listen,
Yeah,
I
no,
don't care.
we did in a bunch of places. But what I realized is that you need to focus on the core things that matter a lot more to you. And in our case, in the journey that we were now, of course, things will be different because we are much more out there and so on. So that's been an interesting journey. How much do you interact with the ecosystem, and what do we do? But the bottom line I have realized is that this is pursuit of labs, and we've gone through now 2 labs. I feel the first lab was to prove that we can train something, some kind of models from scratch. And second lab was to say that hey, we can actually sell in the country.
Yeah.
There are at least 500 logos with who we do business today, and these guys don't buy because we are a sovereign AI company, right? The third lab now is to really make this consequential company. I think in this third lab, which I see is most looks like a straight lab, we go full accelerator on. this has also been helpful, just knowing where we are, right? What do we need to now do for the next 6 months? I think that's also been a blessing. But frankly, I should say we have been very fortunate. People around you, people like you, other people have been always very supportive, right? And I think that the other funders, the government, generally a lot of intent to say, hey, let India win. Like, come on, let's do something. Let's make it happen. That gives a lot of energy to individuals and also the team.
The only thing I want to just add as we wrap this up is look, when I was building a company, right, once in a while I had somebody show up and come and tell me this, because you don't realize in day to day, and I want to tell you this, that look, there's a lot to do, long way to go, but do take a moment and appreciate the last 12 months, right? Like from where we were, and I'm going to say where we were 12 months back, right? Where there was the model was still very much in hope zone, right? We had got the sanction, but it was still being built. Capital was, you were very much like, listen, we'll get there, but it was still very much like we don't know where it's going to come from. Model was not there. Inference wasn't there. Team wasn't as built out and scaled up. So I think that do take a moment to appreciate. I think it's been a good year, right? In the year -1 to 0. And at least, like I said, as an external observer and as a consistent supporter, very, what's the right word to use? Maybe for the lack of better words, impressed by how far, especially the last 9-12 months have come along. And I think, like I said, do take that moment to acknowledge and appreciate before obviously pounding all foot forward again.
Yeah, I know that's also the thing that we need to learn, right? We need to be more appreciative of where we are, and want to thank you as well. See, I don't know how much your audience knows about what you do and how you think about things. I think your inputs and encouragement through the journey has been very valuable, right? I think
Thanks.
you built Haptic. You could have done anything else in the world, but you chose to go back to the government and help with the India mission. I think the core that India should win in AI has been close to your heart, and I think even with Activate from the early days, I think we've been in touch, and now of course the partnership is there. But I genuinely feel that there's a lot of intent from people to do something,
Yes.
but you need to get activated and actually put it out. And I genuinely hope that what you're doing in Activate becomes 1,000 times larger, and we can power this next 10 years. I think what has happened in fintech will happen again.
Yeah.
I think India has talent. I don't think we should doubt it. Need a little bit more capital, need a little bit more clarity on the
And
key
patience.
things. A little bit more patience, right?
Yeah.
Nothing's changing in a quarter.
Exactly.
Things are changing a lot.
It's
but
a 2-3 decade journey.
yeah, and we go build that and build a consequence. But I think the key thing is do deep tech, right? We need to be at the core of innovation, being at the surface.
What's your advice? Final thing. I'm a researcher, young founder, young builder, somewhere in the age range of 19 to 24, watching this pod. What's your advice to them? Try to be as specific. Everybody knows, let's go build an AI, but how and what and where?
No, firstly,
India.
I think it's important to be an entrepreneur. I have come to appreciate the value it creates, right? Asymmetric value. I think if India has to win, I understood somewhere that we have like a few 100,000 startups now. I think that number
registered, yeah.
it should be like 10 million, and I think it'll come. And I think innovation will not happen from companies that have 10 lakh people. It'll happen from individuals who have high agency. So if you're an individual who is thinking of this area, I think starting up is a great idea. Or even startup is not necessarily just starting a company. Thinking of new problems, solving them, working out where value is, understanding full stack, business, technology. There's a lot of value to that, right? That is one category of things to focus on. The other category is there's still a lot of there is going to be continuous value in going to the basics, right? Just imagine, right? Just in the beginning of this year, everybody's like prompt engineering seekte hain, right? And now, what is that? Now, then somebody says agentic engineering, and then loop engineering, and then agentic graph engineering. So I think people are inventing these nice words, and we are going around in this circle. Going back to basics, I have a grasp on the core. Either it's a systems engineering like hardware, data centers, or core things like I understand algorithms and things like
So
that.
spot on.
We
Yeah.
need that, right? And it's okay. There's a lot of noise, but you focus and you get your act right, you can be of value, right? So I think these are the two things: go full stack and build companies, and otherwise go build deep skills in specific areas. And if we build an army of people like this, the inevitable thing of India winning in AI will happen in the next decade.
All right. To India winning in AI, shared mission, shared hope and dream.
Yes.
Let's as ecosystem players and obviously as builders, let's all push towards that. Pratyush, always fun. So glad we did this. This was
Absolutely.
overdue,
Absolutely.
and we'll catch you again maybe in the next 12 months later. And
Sooner, hopefully. Let's see.
no, and share with the audience at least in terms of
Yeah.
what progress looks like. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Aakrit.